So today we're going to download Sage files from Moodle. The first thing we should always do is get organized ahead of time. So we'll create a module folder on our desktop because Sage doesn't like OneDrive too much. In the module folder, we can create two different folders. One for the cab files or the backup files that we're going to download from Moodle, and the other will be for the company files that we're using. Starting this way is going to help us stay organized and understand what Sage needs to work for the rest of the module. Once we've created our folders, we need to go to Moodle, and it's going to be in a different place in each module. In module 21, there's a folder right at the beginning in the resources. I would suggest downloading the whole folder all at once. You'll see, so these are all the cab files that we need, which are backups. Moodle by default is going to download to the download folder on our computer. We're just going to have to extract it and put it onto our desktop in the folder we just created. So if we look in downloads, we'll see. Now we have to extract the file from Moodle, but the Sage files will not be extracted. We'll have to restore them using Sage. So once we find the file and extract, you'll see that we have all of the cab files in our folder on our desktop. And they're called cab files. It's a Sage file that's compressed and it looks like a cabinet. So hence cab file. Once we've got them in our backup folder, if you click on it, you're going to see a ton of files that are, you don't know how to open them, you don't know what they are. We can't do anything with these. You shouldn't try to extract them. You shouldn't try and open them. It's not going to work. What we need to do first is access Sage 2019. If you're working at home, it might be 2019.0. At school, it's going to be 2019.3. And you can tell on this, the little screen that opens up at the beginning of Sage. Because you're going to work on it regularly, I would suggest that we pin it to the taskbar. It's just going to make it a little bit more efficient. Sage gives us a few choices. The first is opening a sample company, which is just a company Sage has with all kinds of information in it. We can restore from backup, and that's what we're going to end up doing most of the time. The second option was to create a company from scratch. When we're restoring from backup, the first thing we have to do is tell Sage where the files, the cab files are. And because we put them in the folder on our desktop, we can easily find them. Every time you see the word browse when you're restoring, you need to click it. So the second time you see browse, what you're doing is telling Sage where to save the file. So in the company folder, by default, it's going to be named new. So make sure you rename it to the company file. I'm sorry, I said chapter 3. I should have said chapter 5 here. And then we're going to finish and let Sage do its thing. You'll see all of a sudden we'll get a window asking us to update. Now the reason we're being asked to update is because some people are working in 0.0, some are in 0.3. So once a Sage file is updated, it can't be opened in older software. So we left it as a 0.0 version. And we don't want to automatically back it up. That's why I checked that little box, because we already have the backup file from Moodle. In the real world, you probably would create a backup first. Once you open Sage, it's going to ask us about a session date, which is something we're going to learn later on. And this is what Sage looks like. I'm sure you've seen it in some of your previous modules. Now, if we look in that folder, you'll see that little cab file. When we look into the company, once we restored it, turned into two files, an SAJ and an SAI, which is the blue logo and the file folder. So by opening Sage and clicking restore, we took this cab file, which looks like a cabinet, and opened it up and turned it into a company file. The company file is what we're going to use on a daily basis. Now let's say we did a day's worth of work. We want to end the day well. We can back up our Sage file again, which is like creating a checkpoint. There's a couple of ways to do it. We can do file backup, we can click the backup, or we can just close and choose to back the file up. It's important that we rename it the same as the company name, and usually you'll put a date so that you know when the backup was created, at what point you created a safe spot you can go back to and work. And we're going to have to tell it where to go. We're going to go back to our desktop and put it in the backup files or the cab folder. Okay, so the original file that I gave you had none of the work completed. You did a day's worth of work, a morning's worth of work. You don't want to lose those transactions. So what you would do is create a backup with a date at the end of it. And you'll see we have our original, and then we also have the new backup. And because I closed, you'll see Sage is going to close. Okay. So we have the new one that with the work we did this morning or during the day. Tomorrow morning, we come in and we want to get started up again. We don't have to restore. All we have to do is go and open the company file that we were working on. If we did everything properly, we shouldn't have any issues and we should just be able to open the file. We'll choose a session date again and Sage is going to work. And then that's the process you'll repeat throughout the module. Every time you work on a company file, you have to restore it the first time.